Well, I guess it's my turn to, share a story around the campfire. My favorite outings often involve doing some camping. And so a buddy of mine, Ed, called me and said that he had been drawn for an elk permit up on the White Pass area and asked if I'd like to join him. He said that we'd be hiking in a few miles and, climbing up a mountain and camping overnight, and that I could help him bring the elk out, and I could bring my bow and arrow, and if deer came by, I could take it. It just really sounded like a lot of fun. So I decided, okay, well, look, my legs. I was 72 at the time, and my legs weren't in very good shape the year before, so I wasn't sure I could do it. So I said, well, look, why don't we make it kind of tentative? Tell me what I need to bring, and he gave me a big list of things and lent me his backpack to put it in. And he said, you fill it out, have it all packed, ready to go, and we'll get together and caravan down to the trailhead at White Park. We'll start up the hill. If you can make it, great. Otherwise, turn around and, I'll camp by myself. So great. I got all my stuff together. I actually weighed the backpack and was amazed. It was like 75 pounds. But it really fit well on my back. I was really surprised that I could strap it there, and it was so well balanced that, I figured, well, okay, I'll try walking with this thing. So we, wind up getting over to the trailhead, and the first bad thing that came up was Ned said, well, look, I got a problem here. I, forgot to pack last night, and, so I got the stuff in boxes in my trunk, and I need to pack my backpack first, and then we can take off. So, geez, it takes him like 2 hours to pack his backpack. And so it's like 1 o'clock, I think, by the time we started going up the hill. He says, okay, you go first, and here's a walkie-talkie, and we'll stay in touch that way. And, just every once in a while, just check in, let me know how you're doing, and we should be able to do this thing. So I started up the hill, and I was amazed. I could shuffle my feet, and I could do it. My knees looked like they might hold out. So I went up, and pretty soon I realized that Ed was kind of lagging behind. I didn't see him when I turned around on the trailhead, so I called and I says, how you doing back there? And he says, well, look, I had 2 backpacks that I put on. The second one, I wrenched my back while I was putting it on, and I'm struggling a little bit, but I'll make it. No, don't worry, just keep going, and when you get to a fork in the road, just describe it to me, and I'll tell you which way to turn. So okay, so we keep heading up the hill that way, and so we start getting into the late afternoon, and I called back and said, and I could see some lights down below at a turn in the path, and so I said, hey Ed, when you get to this spot, call me so I know how far behind you are. So I find out that it's like a half an hour before. He's a half an hour behind me. So he says, just don't worry about it. He says, I'll catch up. In fact, I'm going to take my second backpack off, and just lay it by the side of the trail. So I keep going, and I says, how far to the top is it? Oh, it's not far. Just keep going, So I keep heading up there, and one of the things that he had me bring was a headlamp, but I had mistakenly packed it in the back of the backpack, and instead of just wearing the thing. And geez, I didn't really want to take the backpack off and look for it, because I was afraid that it was so well balanced that if I might not be able to get it on just right and be able to continue on. So I decided, well, I'll just keep going into the night. It was starting to get dark out, and so again I keep checking every once in a while with Ed, and just how far, how you doing back there, and now it's really starting to get dark, and I'm kind of afraid of stepping off the trail because it's getting pretty steep up there, but I just shuffle my feet along, and getting just enough starlight, that I can see where I'm going. And I keep saying, how far is it? Oh, don't worry about it. It's you're almost there. So pretty soon I look down and I see his headlamp coming, down below, and he catches up with me, and we're almost at the top by then. Now it's getting, it's almost midnight, and we're, up at the top, and he says, "Well, how are your legs doing?" And I said, "Terrible." I said, "I have no feeling in them whatsoever." And he says, "Maybe it's a good idea, we're not far from where we're going to camp. Why don't you take your backpack off and just only take the essentials of what you need to camp with, your sleeping bag, etc. And just leave them at the top, and then we'll come up in the morning and get them, because as we go downhill, we're going over some shale, and I don't want you slipping, if you don't have good balance." So I take stuff off and leave it up there, and we head down and finally set up camp, and it's well after midnight now that we get camp set up, and I jump into the sleeping bag, and I'm ready to head out. Ed says, "Hey, I'm starting to worry about leaving my backpack back there. Why don't you put your walkie-talkie next to your pillow, and if I get in trouble, I'll call you. But I'm going to head back and get my backpack, and then come back." So okay, so I do that, and I don't fall asleep. I pass out. I am so tired that I'm just exhausted. The next thing I remember, in the middle of the night, I just hear these noises. There's elk all around the tent, just grunting and stomping, and trying to figure out what's going on. I've never been in this kind of situation before. I figure, well, I am so tired. If they want to stampede over the tent, they can have me. I can't outrun them. So I go back to sleep, and the next thing I do, I wake up and it's like 6 o'clock in the morning, and it's light out, and I look over, and Ed's not there. And well, that's not a good sign. So I pick up the walkie-talkie, and I say, "Hey, Ed, where are you?" Nothing. He doesn't respond. And that is not a good sign. So kind of sit back and think, well, Jesus, take inventory of where I'm at here. I came in the middle of the night. I've never been to this spot. I think I know the direction that we came from, but there's 2 trails that could take us back to the car. So I head up one, and I look for footprints and stuff, and I can see where, it's really hard packed, gravelly trail, and I can see where it's been disturbed. On both trails were disturbed, so I just had to pick one. So I start up going on this trail, and I've got basically taking my walkie-talkie with. Oh, the other thing is, I look around, and of the stuff that I've left at the top of the pass is my GPS and my cell phone. I'm really kind of stitched in terms of just knowing direction and all that. So I head up there on this one trail, and after about 20 minutes or so, the trail is really petering out, and I said, "No, this can't be it." And I was getting ready to turn around and head back to the camp and go for the other trail, and just out of, I decided, well, I'll give it one more shot. So I picked up the walkie-talkie and said, "Ed, where are you?" And he answers. And he says, "Yeah," he said, "I'm just about at the top of the pass." And he said, he asked me to describe where I was, and I told him, and he said, "Oh, you're on the mountain goat trail." He said, "Head back to camp. I should be there just about the same time you are, and we'll figure out what we're doing from there." So I head back down and get together, and he says, "Well, you want to go fishing?" He had me bring a little fishing pole, and I says, "Well, where's the lake?" And he said, "Oh, it's about a 2-hour hike." And I said, "You got to be joking." I said, "My legs are so tired, there's no way, In fact, I'm so tired, I'm not going to be able to make it. I have overdone myself. I've got to get back and give my legs, my body some rest. And so I'll stay with you, for a day, and camp out and eat our food and all that stuff. But by tomorrow, I need to head on back and recoup a little bit." So he said, "Okay." So help me do some scouting around the camp. See if we can't figure out where we're going to have set up a blind, etc., for the elk, and I says, hey, speaking of the elk, last night they were, like trying to stampede the tent or something. What's going on? And he says, oh, this place, people backpack in with horses, and they throw out some mineral salt for their horses. And what the horses don't get, the elk really need that mineral also. So they come and kind of, lap it up, and they kind of depend on that for, supplements. And so, okay, so anyway, we spend the day just, hanging out around camp and cook a couple of good meals out of the, these dry food situations. And so the next morning, he goes up and gets my backpack actually during the day, and he says, I'll go up to the top of the hill with you with your backpack and get you started in the morning. As you go down, when you get to the car, text me. The cell phones won't work. We don't have reception for cell phones here. And I said, well, how come I couldn't get a hold of you last night with the walkie-talkie? He says, oh, actually what happened was I went the other side of the mountains, and the walkie-talkie reception doesn't work over there. And then I got back to near the top of the mountain, and I was so tired I just had to kind of collapse and use the tarp that I had in my backpack to cover myself with, and I brushed some of the snow off in the morning and headed on down. And so he said, with the cell phone, just text me once you get back to the car, and if I don't hear from you by 2 o'clock or something like that, then I'll come looking for you. Okay, so that's the plan. So we get to the top and put the backpack on me, and I get all my gear together and stuff, and I start down, and God, it is so much easier. I mean, I'm just going like gangbusters going downhill instead of carrying that pack uphill. So, I make it back to the, car maybe in 3 hours instead of like the 8 or 9 hours that it took hiking in. And so I get back and I started thinking about it. Jesus, I could, if Ed gets an elk, I could probably walk up to the top of the mountain with an empty backpack. If he can get his elk to the top, cut it up in pieces and put it in pillowcases and stuff, I can probably, pack the elk down. So I texted him and said, let him know that I made it okay, and to let me know if he got something, and I'd help him out. But as it turned out, he didn't get an elk, but I made it back, and all I got out of it was a good story. I hope you liked it.
We hope that you enjoyed this week's telling of Campfire Tales. Please remember to hit subscribe to make sure that you get the announcements for next week's upcoming activities, as well as the new topics for the Campfire Tales. Please also share the fun that we have here and let your friends know about our website. Check out rogersoutdoorchannel.org for more information and to stay connected. If you like the outdoors, great to enjoy this site.